Hi, my name is Kristen. This is Kristen Craze Books, and I'm here to wrap up my November. So my November reading started off strong. I was really in the reading mood, and that kind of teetered out at the end of the month, but that always happens to me. So I wanted to wrap up everything that I read for Once Upon a Readathon, which I did complete. I finished all the steps, got as many points as I could. I didn't get all the points, but I think I did pretty well. And then I did read 3 books for Nonfiction November. I was hoping to read more. I'm in the middle of something I will talk about as well, and I will probably have to put that off until January, but I want to tell you about it because I do think it's fantastic and I highly recommend it. And then there are a few other books. I'm not going to talk about this in this video because I read them for a video that's coming out on Saturday. So let's just get started with everything I read for Once Upon a Readathon. And I'm super happy that I managed to read a couple Fairy Loot books because I really want to get through those. I told myself that I would get through those. I wouldn't let them pile up, but here we are. So the first one is actually one of their paperbacks that they included, and it's probably the prettiest paperback that I own, and I'm so glad that I had fun with this. It's not the greatest book ever, but it's fun. And this is Twin Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Weber. So 2 authors wrote this. Just look at this though, it's so pretty. And this is like more traditional YA fantasy. It's royalty, that kind of thing. It's lost princesses, twins separated at birth. So a lot of tropes that you might come to expect. So it's pretty predictable. It's not groundbreaking, but I had fun with it. I really flew through this one, and I will be reading the sequel to this. So that is a good sign to me. And the tagline says 1 throne, 2 princesses. So it's set in a world where these twins are born, their mother is killed, one of the twins is taken away and one is left behind. And we get both of their perspectives. Rose is the princess, and what is the sister's name? I should know because I actually liked her better. And Ren. So Ren is the one that was stolen away. She is being raised by her grandmother, who is a witch, and so she's aware that witches exist, that she has powers. She ends up working with somebody to kidnap Rose and pretend that she is Rose so that they could infiltrate the court and kind of just kill everybody, really, to be honest with you. And it's really about sisterhood, and when those two connect and realize that, well, Rose didn't even know that Ren existed, so that revelation was interesting. I thought that the romances were fine. We're really just building up to the romances in here, so each of them have a romance with somebody from the other sister's life. So I think that's kind of interesting, but I'm more here for the sisterhood and how that all plays out because they're extremely different. Rose is much more naive because she was raised inside the court. She never left this palace. She's being manipulated here. There's a lot behind why Rose is the way she is, but she can be frustrating to read about, and you end on like a bit of a cliffhanger, but not enough that it's frustrating. So I was happy with that, and yeah, it's just a fun time. I did have a good time with this one. The next Fairy Loot edition I read was Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. This one's actually nominated for the Goodreads Choice Award for YA Fantasy, which I thought was interesting because this was a 3-star for me. Kind of on the same level as Twin Crowns, but I think I like Twin Crowns more, even though I think that this is doing some more interesting things. This is following Violet, and she is like, what do they call her in this? She's a prophet and a liar. So she is able to predict the future, and so she works for the king, and he kind of taught her to lie when you have to when it's for the benefit of him and for yourself. And she has a enemies to lovers kind of relationship with the prince, which I didn't like. That's why this is 3 stars for me. I was not into the prince at all, not into the romance that is developing in here at all, but I liked Violet's character. I thought that there were some interesting twists in here that I really wanted to get from Twin Crowns, but this one delivered in some twist. It wasn't quite as predictable as Twin Crowns was, and yeah, it was just kind of fun. There were some fun side characters. I liked the princess's sister in here. The world was really interesting. So it's just her trying to survive in this world, and there's a lot of politics at play here. The prince has to get married, and she keeps like predicting that he will meet someone, but he never really does. She's kind of making that up, and it all kind of unfolds from there. I won't say more. So yeah, again, this is the first in the series. I will probably check out the next one, and again, it was just a good time, a beautiful edition, and I'm happy to have read it, and I just love when Fairy Loot puts these ribbon bookmarks in here. It makes all the difference. So yeah, enjoyable, quick read. After that, I wanted something a bit more romantic, a bit steamier, and this certainly delivered. This is Mistakes Were Made by Meryl Weisner, and this is a book I've talked about quite a bit. Happy I finally read it. This is an age gap romance. My best friend's mom. We are following a character named Cassie who is a college student, and it's family weekend. I think she's a senior in college in this, and she's not close to her family at all, so she avoids campus during that time, and she ends up at this bar where she meets a woman named Erin who is up for family weekend, but Cassie is not aware of this, and they end up having a one-night stand. And then the next day, Cassie is invited by her best friend to have breakfast with her and her mom, and her mom is Erin, the woman that she hooked up with the night before. Of course, all this stuff happens from that. They're shocked about that, but they have such a good connection, and eventually, through some convoluted reasons, Cassie ends up at Erin's for Christmas break. And of course, they keep hooking up. They have a good connection. I actually do think they have a strong relationship, but they are hiding their relationship from the best friend, from the daughter, and that just stresses me out, to be honest with you. So I knew that was all gonna blow up in their face. You just know that's coming when they're hiding a relationship like that right in front of them in a home where the best friend is. You just know it's not gonna end well. So that was stressful for me, but it was worth reading. The end was really sweet. I actually got emotional and teared up, and this is super steamy. I thought it was really, really well done. I'm not typically somebody who likes those tropes like age gap romances or my best friend's mom or dad. To be honest with you, I haven't read them other than this one, so maybe I do like them. Who knows? But I did enjoy this. I thought it was really well done. And I actually managed to finish a series. It's a duology, but it counts. And I read The Hidden Palace by Helene Wecker, who wrote The Golem and the Jinni. That is the first book in this duology. And I think if you liked The Golem and the Jinni and you don't feel like you need more, to just stop there. Not that this was a bad book. I gave this 4 stars. I really, really like this, but I think that's because I just like Helene Wecker's writing so much. The way that she creates atmosphere is like top tier. Nobody does it quite like her. She's like Catherine Arden for me in that way, except that this is set in New York, and all the characters that we meet, of course you follow the Golem and the Jinni, but you also meet other characters in New York and follow their stories, and there's a lot of the same characters from the first book, so you do learn more about them, but I feel like you got enough closure in the first book. You don't need this one. This was written, I think, 9 years later, and I don't know that we got much development in terms of the Golem and the Jinni and their relationship. If you read the first one and you're curious about, I think it's Sophie or Sophia and her storyline, this might be worth picking up because we do get a lot more information in that, because I do feel like in the first book we didn't get a lot of closure on what was going on there. You do get that in this one, but I highly recommend The Golem and the Jinni, and if you don't want to continue, that's fine. I don't think you have to, but if you love the writing, pick this one up. I will talk more about The Golem and the Jinni in future videos because it's definitely in my top of books of the year. I just love it. But it is the story of a Golem and a Jinni and their creators, and how they both end up in New York and form an interesting relationship, and how they are very different and fighting with really what it means to be human even though they're not human, and their relationships with their creators are very different, or the people that are looking after them. And yeah, it's just really interesting. It's really a fantastic book. You can tell Helene Wecker really cares about the story of these characters, and she's put so much research into what New York was like in the 1800s. So the first one takes place at the end of the 1800s, and this one is set around World War I, I believe. So yeah, it's just, I love Helene Wecker's writing. I just don't think that this was really necessary, though I enjoyed it all the same. This next one, I'm not quite sure what to make of it, and it's Hench by Natalie Zena Walshotz. I love the premise of this. It is following a character named Anna, who is like a low-level hench, and that is somebody who works for supervillains, and she pretty much does data entry at the beginning of this story. And then she kind of works her way up the ranks, and she ends up in this very traumatic situation where she is gravely injured, and it opens her eyes to how damaging and harmful superheroes are, and just the casualties that they leave behind, the innocent people that they kill, the cost of them, the infrastructure that they destroy. So if you're thinking of Marvel and like all the Avengers movies and all the buildings they destroy and the innocent people that must have been killed in their wake, it does explore that. I think that's interesting. We actually get like the math and statistics behind that because Anna is like into data entry, and she starts a blog where she's sharing all these numbers, and that gets picked up, and she ends up working for a really popular supervillain. My problem was, I don't really understand Anna. I understand her motivations. She's right about a lot of this stuff, but I feel like in some ways she's a hypocrite, and I just wish there was more self-awareness there. And there kind of is, just not enough for me. And then the humor, I'm so picky about humor. The humor doesn't always land for me. Anna is very sarcastic to the point that I thought it was too much, and she actually like pushed people away. And I went into Hench not realizing that this is a sequel, a series. The author is writing a sequel, and I think we needed it. I will probably try that or wait for reviews to see if it's worth checking out, because I have a lot of questions. The ending of this was not good. It's not satisfying to me. So I was happy when I went onto Goodreads and saw that there is going to be a sequel, because I was under the impression this is a standalone. I need more answers, some relationships here we didn't get closure on. I don't know, I'm still thinking, how do I feel about this? And I will be honest, this is my first super villain or superhero novel, and I thought that I would love that concept, but I'm not sure that I do, and I don't think it's fair to just say I'm never going to read anything about superheroes again based on one book. But if you have recommendations for that, let me know. I know there's Vicious, but I struggle with V. Schwab, so I don't know, we'll see. But I am open to trying the sequel just to get some answers. It was a really, really quick read. I will say that. It's a lot of dialogue, but also this didn't affect my star rating. I gave this 3 stars, but this didn't affect my star rating. But this whole book, there are 8 chapters, and the chapters are so long, and that's always frustrating for me. But yeah, I thought this was unique, and there were things about Anna that I thought were interesting, and she could have been so cool and a favorite character of the year if there was more self-awareness there. It's just not the kind of character that I can connect with, I do think. Anyways, I don't want to spoil anything, but she just wasn't my favorite. But some great side characters, I will say that. I also read a novella called Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. This is my first book from C.L. Polk, won't be my last. I really liked the writing here. This is set in 1930s Chicago. I think it's like 136 pages. It's very short, a good way to get acquainted with the author's writing. And Sarah from Brighton Bookish talked about this, but I want to reiterate it, that if you see vampire in the synopsis, it's really not about vampires at all. This is more of an angels and demons story. It is a sapphic romance. It's so hard to talk about because you don't want to give anything away because it is only 136 pages, but I really enjoyed this. I liked the atmosphere, I liked the writing, I liked the characters. It's very bittersweet, and I liked that we have our main character and her relationship with her brother, and she's really willing to sacrifice some really important things. I'm not going to say too much, to save the people around her, including her brother, her partner, and it's just really moving and bittersweet, and I've really enjoyed it. A one-sitting read. I actually listened to it thanks to Libro.fm, and I recommend the audiobook, and I can't wait to read more from this author. So that was a good novella, a good one to read if you're looking to meet your Goodreads goal, if that's something you're interested in doing. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Moving on to Nonfiction November, I read 3 celebrity memoirs in November, and they were all nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards, so that was helpful. And I'm in the middle of another book that is not a celebrity memoir, but I want to talk about the book that I did vote for under the memoir autobiography category on Goodreads, and that is Finding Me by Viola Davis. You have to listen to this on audio if you can, because Viola Davis is such a great narrator. I flew through this. I loved listening to her story. She really talks about how difficult her childhood was. She grew up in poverty. Her brother was abusive, sexually abusive, and it's heart-wrenching to hear her childhood and everything she went through, but she really talks about her relationship with her parents and her sisters, and then how she became who she is, and the path that she was led down, her time in New York, going to Juilliard, how she got into Juilliard, which is all really fascinating. And the thing that really stood out to me was her marriage. She talks about her husband in such a sweet way. Her husband sounds like such a supportive and wonderful person that I just love that. It actually moved me to tears. She deserved it. So it's just so sweet. And then she talks about motherhood, her daughter. She talks about different movie sets that she was on, the connections that she made with different actors and actresses. She talks a lot about like Emma Stone and people on the set of The Help, and then her mixed feelings about The Help, if you know all the story behind that one, but how that filming of that movie was really important to her and the bonds that she formed on that set. And then all throughout her career she talks about pretty much all the movies you would expect her to talk about. And then of course How I Got Away with Murder, which she doesn't talk about too much, to be honest with you. So if that's what you're looking for in this, you're not going to get that. It's really, a lot of it is her childhood and then her time in Juilliard, which I appreciated. Love listening to her talk. I hope she writes another memoir in the future because she's just such a great person, great voice. Loved everything about this, so this was an easy vote for me. And then I buddy read We Were Dreamers by Simu Liu with Nat from Nerdy Nat Reads, which was really fun, and I highly recommend buddy reading on Storygraph. I've never buddy read a nonfiction before, so that was the first and it was fun. And Simu Liu is obviously the actor from Marvel, Shang-Chi, and this is his story growing up in Canada and how we got into acting. But what I really liked about this one is that it opens up talking about the story of his parents and how they met, how they immigrated to Canada and had to leave him behind. And it was really, the first few chapters are the story of his parents, which really laid the foundation for his life and how he was raised and why his relationship with his parents when he was a teenager and growing up was the way that it was, and the complications that happened there. It was not a perfect relationship. They were not perfect parents, but who are perfect parents? But his parents really pushed back against him, and they obviously have a great relationship now because he talks about his parents on social media all of the time. But I did appreciate getting that perspective of their time immigrating to Canada. And there, again, listen to this one. There's a moment where he has to leave his family in China behind to immigrate to Canada with his parents, and he gets so emotional reading that part that it made me emotional. And I just love that you can feel that connection. It feels like you're talking to a friend. I will say I don't think that his humor always landed for me. I don't think it will land for everybody. His jokes, I think he tried to make jokes, they just didn't work. But really, that's a small gripe here. Simu Liu and I are the exact same age. We were born in the same year. I'm also from Ontario. We went to the exact same university at the same time. So that was weird. He talks about going to this university. I'll just say it's Western because if you read the book, you know. And yeah, so he talks about the residence that he was in. Thankfully I wasn't in that residence because, as he says in here, that place is a nightmare. It's called the zoo, and it really is. So that he talks about that, the cheers. He talks about the first week at school, which I was all a part of. I must have seen him because he wins some kind of competition, and I know I was there, just wish I remembered. So that was really weird for me, really weird. And it talks about him graduating from there, becoming an accountant, can you believe that? And then how he gets into acting, then his time in Hollywood and all that stuff. It's fun. I thought this was fun. So yeah, I would recommend it if you're into Marvel at all, or him, or Kim's Convenience. So yeah, it was a good time. I then listened to Mean Baby by Selma Blair, and again, this is a story where she talks about her childhood leading up to becoming famous and her career and her relationship with different celebrities. She really talks about her friendship with Sarah Michelle Gellar, and if you have watched Dancing with the Stars at all, you will know that Sarah Michelle Gellar was there cheering Selma Blair on a lot. So that was really sweet. She talks about Cruel Intentions, so she talks about Reese Witherspoon quite a bit. She had a really deep friendship with Carrie Fisher, which I thought was interesting, and she talks a lot about that, and there were some really moving parts to that. But really, I think she talks about her complicated relationship with her mom the most, and her childhood. And I don't even know that she realizes how complicated her relationship with her mom really was, because she doesn't talk about that a lot, and her mom is no longer with us, so maybe that is part of it. But you read it and you can tell it was not the healthiest of relationships, and obviously she didn't understand. I don't know, she feels like she's really close to her mom, but I don't know that it was always the healthiest relationship, and she didn't acknowledge it as much as I thought that she should. But this is the story of her life, so it's hard to look at yourself and your relationships and really know what's going on there. I'm just an outsider reading her words, but actually I was listening to it, and she cried quite a bit in here, so again, it was emotional for me. She talks about her MS diagnosis and how long it took her to get there, so that was really sad and frustrating to read about. She talks about her unhealthy relationship with alcohol quite a bit, all the embarrassing moments that happened because of her drinking. She talks about motherhood, her past romantic relationships, so she really lays a lot out for you in this, and I thought it was fantastic, and I do recommend listening to it on audiobook again because it's so emotional. So all three of those books, oh yeah, I did. So all three of those books, listening to them kind of made me emotional, which is interesting. And I guess it's kind of what you expect in a memoir, somebody telling you their story. So those are all of the books that I am going to talk about in this video. Again, I have a few that I've read that I'm going to talk about on Saturday. I'm in the middle of The Woman They Couldn't Silence by, who writes that one now? Kate Moore, who wrote The Radium Girls, which is a really popular nonfiction book that I think even a lot of people who don't read a lot of nonfiction read that and love it. It's really, really well done. And this is the book that she wrote following that one, and it's just as good. The research she puts into this is incredible. It's following a woman who really wanted independence from her husband. She had her own ideas about church and religion and what it is to be a woman, and her husband fought against her and had her committed to an asylum. And it's her in this asylum trying to be free, getting support around her, realizing that a lot of women in this asylum are in the same position as her, and it's so frustrating. And I'm about halfway through. It's a longer book, and I just think it's so well done. So I feel confident recommending that to you now. I probably won't get to finish that until January because I have to focus on my reindeer readathon TBR, but it's so good. So I'll be happy to finish that eventually. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what the best book you read in November was, and if you got this far, what should you leave me? Leave me a Christmas tree emoji because we're starting to get into the Christmas season, and thanks for your support. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.